Hi, I'm Dave. I've done a series of videos on my career, um, 10 years law enforcement in Department of Interior, including U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the National Park Service, and the Bureau of Land Management, and then 15 years as a special agent with NOAA National Marine Fisheries Service. Today I want to talk about my time with the National Park Service at Harpers Ferry National Historic Park. Also, that includes the Appalachian National Scenic Trail and then parts of the Canal National Historic Park. So they all come together sort of in one area and in the states of West Virginia, Virginia, and Maryland. So I transferred from Fort Laramie National Historic Site and to Harpers Ferry in, I think, in early May of '96. So the year before, I had just gotten my 6C retirement, the 20-year retirement for federal law enforcement, and that was a big deal. And it's funny, at the time, it's like, it's a big deal. You get better benefits, but once I hit 50, I was able to retire because I had 25 years in. And so it's nice having that. But in May of '96, coming to Harpers Ferry, my very first day, I'm told to go up, and I had my gear on, ready to go, and I was told the Chief Ranger wants to meet with me, which made sense on my first day, that the Chief Ranger would want to introduce himself and talk about the park. And at that park, at that time, the immediate supervisor was a supervisory National Park Ranger, law enforcement, and then above him was the Chief Ranger. So I drive up to where the Chief Ranger's office is in one of the old historic homes, and it was up top. And I just remember it was a beautiful sunny day, and I park the patrol truck. I get out, and I'm walking into the office area, and there were some reporters that wanted to speak to me, and I didn't say anything. I didn't know anything. Again, I'm just walking up to meet the Chief Ranger. I come in, knock on his door, which was partially open, and he said, "You must be the new ranger. Come on in." Shakes hands with me, and he goes, "We have a situation going on right now that you're going to be a part of." And in the office were another park ranger, and he introduced him as the Chief Ranger of the Appalachian National Scenic Trail. And then there were two men in suit and tie, and he said these are two FBI agents, the Federal Bureau of Investigations. There had been a double homicide on the Appalachian Trail within Shenandoah National Park. Two young ladies were murdered, and the FBI pulled out the pictures. They were very gruesome. I won't go into details. It was very eerie, creepy, the way the homicide was, the way the murder site was. After reviewing the photos and the FBI agents explained to me what was going on, then the Chief Ranger of the Appalachian Trail said, "What we need is we're going to put you, give you a car, and you're going to work with someone who works for the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, a private non-government NGO organization that helps with the management and stuff on the AT, and someone who's hiked the trail, and your job's going to be going for the next 2 to 3 weeks or more every day. You're going to hit different places on the Appalachian Trail in Pennsylvania, from the Maryland border all the way to Harrisburg. And that'll be your zone." And so what they were doing was, the Appalachian Trail runs from Maine to Georgia. And approximately, it's a national park unit. It may only be 50 yards to, in some areas, it might be almost a quarter mile wide. but it's usually like 50, 100 yards wide, 1,000 plus miles long, and most of it's federal, and some of it goes through state parks, and most of it's national park owned, but some goes through National Forest Service. So it was a really big operation, having park rangers from different parks going all the way up to Maine and to Georgia, and then in those areas that were forest, where the AT went through National Forest, then U.S. Forest Service LEOs were getting involved. And so what I was doing was, with this young lady from the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, we would drive to different trailheads, and we were trying to get ahead of people who may have been there when those young ladies were murdered or in that general vicinity. And we were interviewing as many people as possible. I think I interviewed almost 200 people, because there's a lot of people that hike the Appalachian Trail, thousands and thousands of people. And you've got some wackos that are just hiking up there, homeless people. And they just go, they're on welfare or benefits, and they live on the AT, and they just hike back and forth and stop in little towns, get food and supplies, and get back up there. And so there's definitely some people up there that have mental health issues. There's definitely some homeless people that just live up there. And overall, there hasn't been that many murders up there. There's been a few. But this was pretty brutal. And so, again, my job was with this young lady from the Conservancy, to drive to different trailheads. And from the Maryland border to Harrisburg, 70, 80 miles maybe. So it's a big chunk, and there's just dozens and dozens multiple dozens of trailheads where sometimes you would actually have to hike in a little bit to where the AT actually came through. And I was in uniform, and it'd be like, hey, how you doing? Here, I had a clipboard. This is what's going on. We've had a homicide, and 2 young ladies have been murdered. We really need information as to, have you seen anything unusual? Were you down there in Shenandoah during this time frame? Have you seen anything unusual, people that have acted strange or weird? We're trying to get a feel for what's going on from people that are out there meeting other hikers. So I did that for almost a month. Even today, 2020, they thought they may have had some possible suspects, but it's still an open case. It was sad, but this was like my beginning to working at Harpers Ferry National Historic Park. So the park at the time, it's spread out. So, you've got maybe 4,000 acres, and then the Appalachian Trail runs through it, so we patrol parts of the AT that was NPS owned. And then parts of the C&O Canal abut to the Harpers Ferry on Maryland Heights, as well as along the canal. So even though we weren't supposed to be doing C&O Canal work, we were always there, and if we saw a violation, we jumped on it and took care of it, just because we're NPS. And there was some territory disputes between the chief rangers, like, don't you do writing tickets on the C&O Canal? Well, I'd catch somebody, right across from Maryland Heights, which borders the C&O Canal, collecting box turtles. I'm not going to let that go up. I'm not going to call another ranger, hey, can you come down here? It'd be like, that's mine, I'm taking it. But they didn't like you doing that. So, Harpers Ferry, this is a time where the Park Service, NPS, is really transitioning its law enforcement. We had just got 6C, and I got there right after they did like an internal review on Harper Ferry's law enforcement program. They found some deficiencies, such as not having rifles or shotguns. I'm going to let my cat in. Okay? Let's go. So some deficiencies like there, where at Fort Laramie we had AR-15 rifles, semi-automatic 223 rifles, and we had 12-gauge shotguns. Harpers Ferry, which is 50 times more busy, much more law enforcement, and we couldn't have rifles and shotguns. And the chief ranger, I think, really was the one that pushed for that. I thought he was a nice guy, and he was. Very old school. He was getting close to retirement. And he came from a time when, and I get it, where rangers were actually park rangers that did everything. And but he didn't feel like, oh, well, you don't need a rifle or a shotgun. Well, we did. I made some cases where I needed a rifle and a shotgun. I really needed it, and I didn't have it. Things have changed. So this is back in '96. The park, like I said, it's where 3 states come together: Maryland, West Virginia, Virginia, and it's like a Y. You have the Potomac River goes one way, and the Shenandoah goes the other way, and in between is West Virginia, the historic district. Maryland Heights is the Maryland side on the other side of Potomac, and then Loudoun Heights is on the other side. We also patrolled a couple hundred acres of U.S. Fish and Wildlife property, this big giant field, and I don't know why, because they do have a training center now in Shepherdstown, West Virginia, that's beautiful, but this is near, you know, Charlestown, West Virginia, down the road from Harpers Ferry. A couple hundred acres of farmland. I don't know if it was going to be a national wildlife refuge, and they never quite got there, but we patrolled it under a mutual aid agreement. But Harpers Ferry was intensely busy. So if you worked in the Old Town district, you wore the Class A's dress uniform, really, and your flat hat, and I mean, you had to look sharp down there. And down there, you would answer a lot of questions on the history of the park. We gave tons of warnings to people with inner tubes. Inner tubes were not allowed in the historic district. People would inner tube down the river, and they'd get out in their flip-flops and towels, and they'd want to walk through the historic district, and the superintendent didn't like that. And so in the historic district, where all the old buildings were, and then next to it would be the private shops and stores, was Harpers Ferry, the city. But it was a very busy place. In the main area down there, you had parking violations. They had just created a parking lot up top, and then you could take a shuttle bus down to the historic district and walk around. And so, you know, there was you were there in the historic district to walk around and talk to people. Hey, where's this at? Where's the restrooms? Where's this? EMT calls, parking violations. No, you can't park here. You got to move it. You know, inner tubers in the summertime, tons of inner tubers. No, you can't do this. You got to get back in the river. You know, you can't walk with flip-flops through past historic buildings. And even though that kind of thing didn't interest me too much at the time, it still was. It was just such. I grew up near there, so I love the area, and the history is amazing. And it was just fun walking around sometimes the historical city park. But as you got away from it, you got down on the river, you had a lot of people fishing, made lots of fishing without a license cases. Then there was Potomac Street, which is this really rugged dirt road. At the time it was. You need four-wheel drive, you know, in certain times of the year. And then there's a dam that's out on the Potomac. So this narrow causeway. And so any chance I got to get down there, I definitely would, you know, ask one of the other rangers, hey, are you okay down here? Some of the rangers love being in the Old Town to talk to people. They'd be like, go ahead, Dave, go check some fishermen. So I would go down to the dam, and that's where you really would get into some serious issues, especially at night. I did make one DUI arrest and a young lady was driving down there drunk, and there was questions about the jurisdiction of the actual road, but beside the road on either side was Park Service, but the road was, the city said it was theirs. And so what I would do is on the DUI, I watched this person swerving and kind of acting erratic, and then they pulled into a parking area that was definitely NPS. And then as soon as they parked in the parking area, then I put on the lights and stopped them, called for backup. And so now I'm on Park Service property, even though I was driving down on the city road. It's not the city, it was in the middle of nowhere, a pretty remote area, but it was within Harpers Ferry city limits. I watched them drive erratically. I could use that as probable cause, and then once they pulled into a park out near the dam, then I could stop them and get them for DUI because they're operating a vehicle on Park Service property. I had another incident out on the dam early in the morning. Two males fishing. I asked for fishing licenses, and they got irate, and they wanted to fight me. I had my baton out, and they had walked around in a situation where I'm blocked off. I'm on the edge of this dam at the very end. You could walk out there with handrails, and then it was kind of circular, and that's where people would fish. My escape route was blocked. My backup was, 15 minutes. And it was 15 minutes of, it was pretty scary. And state police and a deputy showed up and another park ranger. And it turned out that they had warrants for their arrest. They were in possession of crack. They were fishing without licenses. So I let the state trooper go ahead and arrest them on the state warrants. And then I went ahead and wrote them on, the fishing license violation and possession of crack. But when you're out in the middle of nowhere, and it is a remote area, it was like Dam 3, I think it's called, it's scary. 15 minutes is a long time. It's like forever and a day. And had the baton out, don't come any closer. They had knives. They weren't trying to, but they weren't putting their knives down. Put your knives down. No, F you. They were minorities, and they were doing the, you're picking on us because we're this color. And it was tense, very tense. I didn't want to, again, when do you pull a gun on someone? When do you pull the trigger? That's a very tough decision. I had my baton out, but I probably could have pulled my gun out on them because I had two of them blocking my way out. The river was behind me, so. But Potomac Street, there was a cave there. There was a railroad tracks that came through. There was a cave on the other side that they tried to board up, but people could bend it and get back in there and party in this cave. And that was kind of, I never went too far in there, but you go into a cave, there's no radio signals. And it was like, I'm not going to get stuck in there. And I've heard they put bars up now that nobody can get in there. Then there was Maryland Heights, which was, everyone was designated certain areas as their specific zones. So Maryland Heights was a couple hundred acres, I believe. On Maryland Heights, where the cliff is, there's a tunnel where the train goes in. So up on that cliff is Maryland Heights. And there's a lot of archaeological resources up there from the Civil War. So whenever I had a chance to just do backcountry work, the boss was like, a couple days a week sometimes, you'd be like, put on some your ranger jeans and go up there and see what's going on. I want you to do the boundaries as possible, check signs, and it was interesting because I was always looking for people with metal detectors. That was a big thing that would occur up there. Maryland Heights, I made actually two really good poaching cases up there, hunting cases. There was a road that went up and you cut through someone's property, and I think it's part of the Canal, but it abuts Maryland Heights, so I patrolled it. So I made one case up there where I caught somebody on the park hunting. He had shot a deer. Then I made another case down below where somebody was dragging this buck off park property. Both cases, they were juveniles, but they did pay fines and lost their rifles. I also got shot at up there. The first poacher, young guy that I got, as soon as I got his rifle and his stuff, got the deer, put it in the truck, and had Maryland DNR would come by and take it and give it to food shelters. But I went back out there to retrieve some stuff, and somebody at some distance shot close enough that a branch near me just poof, you could hear this, and then the bang came a second later. I don't know how far they were. I don't know if they were trying to kill me or scare me. That kid probably had a friend, maybe. I imagine it was some distance, a couple 100 yards, but, you know, I called in. They tried to get Maryland State Police to send Trooper 3 helicopter, but then there was a car accident. They said, you know, do you still want us, or we've got a car accident? I said, just go to the car accident. So we let them go instead of having them come out, because it was like, we're not going to find this guy. If he shot from, you know, several 100 yards, you know, he's wearing camo, we're not going to find him. There's so many places where you could hide or go off onto private property. I also assisted with search and rescue up on the cliff. There was one incident where somebody, a climber, had broken their arm, and I went as far as I could free climb. At the top, where you see all those beautiful views of Harpers Ferry from above, that's taken from Maryland Heights. People climb there, or they used to. So I got down on the rocks as far as I could, and I was seeing him. I was still, you know, maybe less than 25 yards away, talking to him, okay, going, how the hell are we going to get this guy out of here? But I believe it was Trooper 3, Maryland State Police helicopter came in, and so I climbed out as far as I could, safely climb out, talk to them. I said, here's where I am. They could see me. I said, 25 yards, go out, and they brought somebody down on a hoist, and they had I'm trying to think of the name for the stretcher type thing that came down that they put them onto, the Stokes maybe, and they pulled them up, and you know, the helicopter's right off the cliff, and I was like, wow, very intense to see. You know, I think they were using Dolphin helicopters, the H-65s at the time, just right off the cliff. I mean, the blades, and you're like, this person's pushing it, and he would come up and hover and then bring the person down. But again, Harpers Ferry was fun. It's a beautiful area. It's a fun place. I lived over in Sharpsburg, Maryland. That was home to me, and I wish I'd stayed longer. I would make some more really big case on the Appalachian Trail. The way it was worked was, after I had done the work on assisting with the double homicide investigation, the chief ranger said, you did a good job. How would you like to work overtime for me and do some poaching investigations? I said, I'd love to do that. So he said, here's a place, you know, it's about 4 or 5 miles down the AT from, I believe, Route 9 in Virginia, past Maryland Heights, heading towards Shenandoah, and there's been reports of people in ATVs. So opening day of deer season in Virginia is going to be at this time. What about you going down there and see what you can find? I said, okay, let me do it. So put on a little backpack with my gear, and I went there towards dusk because that's when some of this activity was occurring. Hiked in. It was 5 miles. It's a long hike in. And walking around, and I'm seeing a tree stand off the AT and ATV tracks. going from West Virginia, going across the state line into Virginia, into Loudoun County. And I was like, okay, there's something going on here. People were, at the very least, they're going over on the ATVs, and I believed I had a topo map, and I said, this tree stands in NPS. During this time, I'm checking the tree stand, I hear an ATV coming, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. And so took out, I had a 6-hour P228 9mm, and I could hear it getting closer and closer, and there was a big like maple tree, and so I stood beside it so I have something. I was like, these guys probably have guns. So they come up and over, and as they come out, I step out and I have the gun down to my side, and I'm like, park ranger, turn your motor off, turn your motor off. And there's two guys, rifle on the handlebars, and in the back, the guy's riding, and he's got a rifle, bolt action 30-06, and I said, put your weapons on the ground. So the guy in the front, he turned the ATV off, he put his gun down, he was like, all right, I'm cool. The guy in the back was like, F you. And he locks around his 30-06. And then I draw down on him. And he's like this. And I'll never forget, he's just your typical West Virginia redneck with a beard down to his, heavy-set guy with a beard down to his waistline, spitting tobacco. And he's just like, you know, you're like, this is it. This is it. I'm going to have to kill somebody. And I've got my gun, I'm aimed in on him, and I'm screaming out, put your gun down. Federal officer, put your gun down. And I finally, this is going back and forth, and he's not listening, but he's rocking back and forth, and he's doing this. And I finally said, I aimed down, I said, I'm going to blow your balls off. I'm going to kill you right now. I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm going to blow your balls off. It's going to be painful, and you're going to die today. I'm going home tonight. And I said, I'm going to do it right now. And he threw his gun down. I'll tell you, when you get to that point where you're just about ready to touch the trigger, you do get tunnel vision. I was at fault of that tunnel vision. The guy in the front, I wasn't paying attention to him. I'm watching the guy with the gun. Who knows? The guy in the front could have had a handgun, you know? But you don't understand until you're in that situation. I had no radio contact. There's no homes, nothing within probably 3 or 4 miles from this location. It's very remote on a mountaintop straddling the West Virginia border. And I've got 2 armed people. And it's just like and you're looking at this. You're looking at this little tiny thing, and everything's black. And your heart's rate, you can hear your heart. You can hear your heart pounding. So, I got the guns, unloaded them, pulled the bolts out. I had them lift their jackets so I could see. I said, lift your jackets. And one at a time while I had my gun out. Put your wallet, there's a tree stump. I said, put your wallets, put your hunting license, your knives, everything on that tree stump. And they did. And I had them do this. And I got all their stuff. I put it in the backpack. I had their rifles. I took the ID off the ATV. And what I said was, you're going to get on your ATV and you're going to leave. I'm going to keep your rifles, your IDs, all your information, and I will meet with you in 3 hours at the gas station on State Line, Route 9. I'll be there with game wardens and park rangers. So if you want your DL back, all your information, meet me at the State Line, or I'm going to come with a bunch of officers and find you at your home. And so they got on their ATV and they left, and I had 2 rifles strung across me and all their IDs, and I had their wallets. I kept it. And then I had to hike back in the dark until I could get to a place where I could get radio communication near, there was a gas station. And I said to dispatch, I said, I need a game warden from Virginia, and I need backup from NPS. We had a dispatcher at the time at Harpers Ferry that went ahead and got that. So my supervisor showed up, and a state game warden out of Loudoun County, Virginia Game and Inland Fisheries came out. And when they showed up, they did show up. And so what I did is I wrote them up for weapons on a national park, loaded weapons, which was not allowed at the time, especially long guns, ATV, and there was a few other things. But what I did is I let the warden get them on illegally hunting in Virginia, riding 2 on a ATV instead of just 1. In Virginia, only 1 person could be on an ATV. Blaze orange violations, and so altogether it was almost $5,000 a piece in violations. And the rifles were forfeited, and Virginia really nailed them. And Virginia was very kind enough and very nice enough to, they put me in for an award with the Isaac Walton League for helping them catch these guys, because they've been wanting to catch them for a long time. And they were like, it just took somebody to actually go out to this extremely remote area to catch these guys. And what's interesting is my boss talked to him. He goes, so what's going on? I heard you gave him a hard time out there. And they said, yeah. We were just testing him to see what he would do. Oh, well, what made you decide to comply with him? We thought he was going to kill us. Once he pointed the gun and said he was going to kill us, then we thought, enough. We want to get home tonight. So, that was interesting. My boss said he does that to everyone. He wanted to see their perspective. Why'd you give him a hard time? Well, he's just a park ranger. They're not serious law enforcement. Well, then why'd you comply? Well, once he said he was going to kill us and blow our balls off and pointed a gun at us, we took it seriously. But when you're up there alone, it's a lonely feeling. This kind of work is not like city cops. You're on your own when you do fish and game enforcement, and so many things can happen that's bad. And you don't have, back then we didn't have cell phones, and radio communications didn't go up there, and there's one way in and one way out, and that's walking on the Appalachian Trail. Things are probably built up more, but back then, as I was hiking back in the dark with a little flashlight going down the trail, way in the distance you could see some lights down there, and down in Virginia, maybe 20, 30 miles away. Leesburg, maybe. But it was remote back then. Very isolated. And probably still is pretty remote today. There's no roads that go up there. I had other close calls there at Harpers Ferry. Helping state police out in the wintertime with the traffic accident. It was snowing. A lot of snow. It can snow big time there. And I remember there was a wrecked car that hit the guardrail, a state trooper, and I had pulled off to the side of the road. I had 4-wheel drive, had a Bronco, and I was talking to the trooper, and I could see somebody swerving out of control, and I was like, shit. And I jumped, leaped in the air, jumped as far as I could off the road down an embankment, and rolled. It was snow, fortunately, a lot of snow. Bam! It happens. Nobody got hurt. The trooper's car got banged up in the back, all crunched up. Could have been me. But this is part of reality when you're doing law enforcement. Other incidents that occurred up there was we had a suicide on the Canal. So a ranger from the Canal said, hey, Dave, can you come over and help me? I said, sure. and it's something that'll all stick in my head. It was a beautiful fall day. The falls in Harpers Ferry is just orange and red and yellows, and it's beautiful. It's stunning colors. And it was like Indian summer. It was, 65 degrees, beautiful colors, sunny day. I get called down on the Canal near Brunswick, Maryland, and I walked down there, and it was sad. It was a teenager boy, and he drew a heart in the dirt underneath him with a jagged through it like it was broke, and he was hanging. He hung himself. And it's hard to explain when you see this beautiful scenery. The leaves are all colored. You're in the mountains, the Potomac River, and rocks, and just in the wind, you just see this on a noose. A teenage boy swinging. And, it hits you, it sticks with you, images that you can never erase. And, like, what a waste. You wish you could have been there just to stop. And then it becomes, you got to stay there until the coroner comes. And the coroner has to bring him down. I assisted the other ranger was the lead on the investigation, but they also brought in, I believe they brought in Maryland State Police. Then we had to find his car. Where's his car? How did he get here? Well, he was actually parked in the Maryland Heights parking area. And, then the other ranger had to do the family notification. And, you don't come home. I mean, that day I made like 5 or 6 fishing cases. I was like, damn, I did really good today. I was pumped up. It was a beautiful day in the fall, working, fishermen on the Potomac. This is what I love to do. And then to end the day like that, and you just come home and you're like, I just want to go to bed. This is horrible. There's it ruins your night. It ruins your next couple of days because that image and then the sadness. But Harpers Ferry, I loved it. It was just an interesting park, the geography, the history. But most of the time we were babysitters. Every time I could get in the backcountry and hike Maryland Heights, the Appalachian Trail, Loudon Heights, occasionally I'd get over there. Made another cool case down there on the, there's a little section also in Virginia along the highway, a pullout. So I would go down there and try fishermen too from the Virginia section on the confluence of the Shenandoah and the Potomac. But you could only pull in one way and go out the other way. So it was one way into the thing. So I got 2 cars pulling in the wrong way. This is a good ticket. So I pull in, lights, pull 2 people over. And that's another thing is you get overly aggressive and you do things that are beyond your capability instead of saying, hey, can I have some help out here? Doing a double car stop, it's not smart. I did it, but it's not smart. Pulling 2 cars over at one time is just like, but the one guy had a warrant for his arrest, and this pushed him into the felony. So this is what made the case interesting. It was a Virginia 3 strikes and you're out. And because he was driving without a license, revoked license, he had warrants for his arrest, my stop was considered a felony stop. So I finally got Virginia troopers to come out, which it took a while because they're coming from like Leesburg. But they get there, so they arrest him, the other guy right. The other rangers couldn't come out and help me for some reason. They had search and rescues going on. So I'm in this sort of isolated area of the park, and it worked out. I actually, soon afterwards, I transferred to BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, and I had to fly back because it was going to go to court, but it was settled, and he did some jail time, the first guy, for 3 strikes you're out for a felony offense. But I suggest don't do double traffic stops. It's not safe. It's like, okay, yeah, I got 2 people. Oh crap, now I have to get ID and check 2 cars that are stacked up one after one. This is not safe. I don't know if they know each other. Turns out they didn't, but it was just like, I did things that was, uh, but when you're younger, you're like, yeah, I got 2 good cases, and it turned out one was a felony case. But doing double traffic stops at one time is not a safe thing. Um, no, I loved Harpers Ferry, and it was busy, bam, 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 year round. But unfortunately, 70% of the time you're a babysitter. You're in the historic district. No, you can't park here. No, you can't have inner tubes. No, you can't do this. No, you got to put your dog on a leash. No, you can't do that. And it's day after day in the fall, people coming for the colors. And then we had flooding that flooded the historic district, and we had people in kayaks going through buildings, kayaking through some of the historic buildings. It was like idiots. And then we would have a big fireworks display where 50,000 people would come at one night to see the fireworks display, and I would have to be up all night long the night before babysitting the fireworks setup so people wouldn't set them off, because these were millions of dollars worth of fireworks. These were professional grade giant mortars, and they put it on a hill. Bolivar Heights, I believe, is where they actually set the stuff up. And so I spent all night babysitting fireworks. And then 50,000 people. They would bring in U.S. Park Police to assist with that. And made a cool case on that night because Park Police Motor Unit, the Harley unit, came out. And so we're doing traffic enforcement. And a car's coming. And I said, I want that guy pulled over. Can you get him over for me? Park Police, they're tough. They're real cops. They are hardcore professional police. You, over there. He had talons, hawk talons, hanging from his mirror, Migratory Bird Treaty Act violation. Interviewed him. He's like, oh yeah, I cut it off a hawk. I found it on a highway. Okay, so, and we were deputized by U.S. Fish and Wildlife, so we could also enforce federal fish and wildlife laws. And so I made a cool little talon case. I remember Park Police going, that's cool. You can pull people over for that stuff? I said, oh yeah. So that was a neat little, federal wildlife case I made. But parking, you're up until midnight getting cars out of the parking lot wearing orange vests. All right, you go this way. Okay, you go this way. Park Police Motor Unit, thank goodness they came, and because they really can just do, they're professionals on traffic enforcement. We had another case that I worked on, me and another ranger working with U.S. Park Police on. We were finding these trees getting cut down on the park, especially on Potomac Avenue, that remote street that went out to Dam 3. And these trees were called Polonia Trees. And we had botanists come out like, why are they hitting this specific type of tree with leaves? And we had heard Park Police was doing investigations. They came out with hidden cameras and stuff. And it turned out that there's a market in Asia for wood carvings. And the Polonia tree is like a balsa wood. So you cut the tree down, and it's very lightweight, easy carving wood. And there was in the black market, Asian trade out of Washington, D.C., which was only 70 miles away. These Polonia trees are gold because they cut the tree limbs, they ship them over to China, and then they do their intricate carvings out of this wood. And things were so bad in D.C. on the George Washington Parkway is that they would actually dress up as like a road crew doing tree trimming with helmets and the whole works, and they put orange flagging. These guys were cutting down Polonia trees in broad daylight. Park Police would drive by and just think, oh, they're just trimming the highway, until they start talking. It's like, hey, to one of the park biologists, hey, would you have people down here doing tree trimming? They said, no, nobody's got permission to do that this time of year because of bird nesting. Really? Why are they cutting these trees down? So they made a bust, some undercover work. So the Park Police came out and worked on that. So that was really interesting, putting up the hidden cameras. And you never know what's going on. There's always some kind of thing that somebody wants on Park Service land. I helped another park ranger, he was the lead on it, do, we caught people with metal detectors because there's Civil War artifacts and mini balls that people like to dig up, and cannonballs and belt buckles. So we busted 2 guys that had metal detectors, so I assisted him on that. He was the lead. Some bad car wrecks, because there's a major road that runs through Harpers Ferry and then into Virginia and then back into Maryland. Route 9, I think it's called. That was, you see brutal things in law enforcement. It was a young girl, she was inner tubing, crossing this major highway to get to the other side, and a truck had hit her, and she had got stuck under it, and it drug her, and she was still alive. But there was like a blood trail where she had been drugged. She was screaming, and I remember, screaming for backup and an ambulance and help, and once another ranger came to put flares up, I was up under the car talking to her, and it was a big truck, and the little girl was stuck under the truck, and it drug her, and screaming, and like, you're going to be all right, we're going to get you out from under there. I had never seen that. You see things that you're like, what do you do? EMTs came. I don't know if they used a jack to get her out. I don't know whatever happened to her. Being there, reaching out, just grabbing her hand. Hey, you got the best people in the world coming to take care of you. You're going to be okay. Just hang in there. We're going to get you out of this. But another thing is, once the EMTs came and the state police, then I got out from under there. I said, these guys are going to help you. Now I'm helping. I go from that straight into helping traffic on this major road in the summertime. Bumper to bumper. People are, and it's hot. It's like 90 degrees, humid. People are irate, beeping the horn because they want to get home. It's like a Sunday afternoon, cussing you out. Why can't you do this? And this car almost was inching its way, almost, and I'm like, don't come any closer, don't come in. And it's inching its way, and I remember kicking its bumper and cussing the guy out. Like, don't effing do this. I'm going to put cuffs on you. And I walked up to the thing, and I was like, listen, asshole, there's a little girl stuck under the truck. She's going to die if she doesn't get out of there. Shut up. I don't care where you have to go. Just shut up and behave yourself. And he had his family with him, and it was like everyone got quiet real. Was it professional? I shouldn't have said stuff like that, but in situations, we're human, and we can only, it's one of those things where you go home at the night and you're just like, you see things that you don't want to see. Things that will never go away, that be stuck in your head forever. It's part of the job. It's not always a fun job. You see gruesome, horrible things. But I worked with a really good group of people. I love the people I worked with there. The interpretive group were great. The maintenance, everyone. And it was fun. There was a lot of diversity, but I didn't want to be, parking cars and dealing with parking violations and dealing with dogs off leash and writing, warnings for inner tube violations. At that time, I was like, I want to get out there and just do wilderness work. I want to do fishing game. I want to get out there and I want to get away from this. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. In Harpers Ferry, I had become more and more of a babysitter. Every time there's a special event, you have to park cars. Every time, it was just, you were a babysitter. You were an armed babysitter. I don't know how Harpers Ferry is now. I wish I had stayed, though. I was only there for like a year and a half. I look back, and I had fun there. And if I could just put up with the babysitter part and just say, well, okay, it's part of the job, I would have lived there longer. I would have, because I had a good social life, I had a lot of friends, I grew up there. Yeah, my home where I grew up was only 15 miles away, and I love that area. It's beautiful. It's a magical area. And when I was a GS9 making 45,000 a year. I went to the Bureau of Land Management making 50,000 a year, 55,000 a year. I was a GS11 with AUO, authorized uncontrollable overtime. I went to Wyoming, and it was a disappointment. And I wish I had enough left the Park Service. I really liked it, even though we didn't have rifles and shotguns when I needed them. Even though, we were dealing with kind of not a super proactive chief ranger at the time, but I got to do some interesting things. I also did like a week detail, a week detail in Shenandoah National Park. They'd made a big poaching case, and some of the local rednecks had threatened to burn down the rangers' homes. This was one bad thing about the Park Service, is that I did this detail, and I was working like 12-hour shifts from throughout the night into the early morning hours. And then I had to drive a half hour to the nearest hotel. This was down near Luray, Virginia. And it was, I understand why I was there. It was important. I'm watching this ranger's home and his family, making sure nobody, but you put in 12 hours and then you got to drive a half hour. And I almost ran off the road and it was just like, this is not good, In the Park Service, when they put you on these what's called set teams at the time, special event team. You put in such long hours, especially over, from it was like 4 in the afternoon until God, it was like 8 in the morning or so. It might have been more than 12 hours. And then you have your little debrief on what's going on and what you saw or what you didn't see, and then you have to drive a half hour. You just can't do that, And so I almost drove off the road, and it was just like, it was a wake-up call. Scared the heck out of me. It was like, you do that, and then it was like, oh my God, I could have killed myself. Hitting a tree or something, or hit another car. And they got to cut those hours back because the Park Service back then, it was like they didn't care. We need you to do this, go do it, and you did it, But I left Harpers Ferry for a GS11 Bureau of Land Management 1801 District Law Enforcement Ranger position in Wyoming. It was a disappointment, and but I do have fond memories of being a National Park Ranger. It was a good agency, and it was a time of change. Major change was going on. We were going away from being park rangers to being more police. There's pros and cons for that. One of the things, a lot of rangers now, they're wearing BDUs and baseball caps and polo shirts, and their bulletproof vest is on the outside. And I've heard some of the arguments, that's safer to dress that way and this and that. But I'll tell you, nobody wants to stand next to you and get their picture taken. And you say, well, who cares? But hundreds and hundreds of people, when I was at Harpers Ferry, from all over the world said, you're an American Park Ranger. Can I have my picture taken with you? I had my flat hat on. I had my leather was polished boots and shoes. And you stand there, you're like a Mountie kind of, and shirt, looking really good, and your vest is inside, and you got your dress pants. People wanted to see that. People loved that image. And to the Park Service today, if you get rid of that image, then you're going to get rid of the fan and support that you've had for so many years. That is what people come to see. People don't come to see, be honest, they don't come here to see national parks, to see maintenance workers or living history. They come to see millions of people from all over the world. Finland and Germany and France. You're an American Park Ranger. You're an icon. And you get rid of that image, and you're going to hurt the agency. And trust me, you can wear what I wore as a National Park Ranger, and you can do the job safely. I did it. When people say, oh, you can't do it safely. No, I wore my vest underneath my shirt. A flat head never stopped me from making an arrest or writing tickets. Now, in the backcountry, I took it off. But you know what? When I was in front of the public, I wore it. And it made a difference. People respected that image. I mean, even people, you're getting your toe in their cars and you got that flat hat on, and people are like pissed off and angry, but it was like, you wear that hat, you are in charge, you know? You're not just some cop. You're a National Park Ranger. You tell that person, you did something wrong. Buses come here and offload tourists, and you're parked here, and you know you're not supposed to park because there's a sign that says don't park next to your car. You've done something wrong, and you're interfering with other people enjoying this national park. There is punishment for this, to deter other people from doing what you did. You say that with a National Park Ranger hat, the flat hat on, people, I mean, I saw it, people are like, yes sir. You know, and it's just sad when I see sometimes in some national parks today. Yellowstone, they wear the flat hats, but some BDUs and dirty boots. You know, if you're in the backcountry, yeah, great. You're doing dope, fish and game enforcement, ARPA, great. But when you're in a high public use area, you want to look sharp because the public is who you work for. They're your fans. They're the ones that pay your salary, and they want to see you be a park ranger. Get out of your truck. Talk to them. Give them a short talk on the history. Stop in campgrounds. Hey, how you doing today? See any bears today? I can tell you where you can see some. I can tell you where you can see mountain goats. Talk to people. Get away from this. You're a cop only. No. You know, join Park Police in D.C. or New York, and you can be U.S. Park Police, and you can do cop work. But that's one thing is National Park Rangers, you're law enforcement, but you still owe it to the American people to be there, to talk to them, to be the ranger that they want to see. If you don't like what I'm saying, yeah, I don't care, I'm retired. But I do appreciate you listening to me. It's almost an hour. Again, if you've never been to Harpers Ferry, it's a beautiful park. So is the Scenic Canal, the Appalachian Trail. I have very fond memories. And again, I grew up there, so as a little kid, I was running all around that park. And then as an adult, to be up there patrolling it was really awesome. Things have changed there, I'm sure. And I'm sure they have rifles and shotguns. But you know, I was there during an interesting transition time, and I'm glad I was a part of that process. So anyway, thank you for listening. And again, this is part of my series on my career, 25 years in federal law enforcement doing natural resource enforcement. And this was my time at the Appalachian Trail, Harpers Ferry, and I did some work on the Scenic Canal and some details in Shenandoah too. Thank you.